Moving on to K3, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Greenfield to initiate a transition to a district-based election system following the release of the 2020 census data. Staff report, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So in October, the city received a request from the Salinas League of United Latin American Citizens that the city transition from its current at-large election system to a by-district election system pursuant to the California Voting Rights Act. The purpose of the item before you is for the City Council to consider a resolution of intent to change its election system. Now, for a little bit of background, the California Voting Rights Act, or CVRA, was enacted to implement the California constitutional guarantee of equal protection and the right to vote. The CVRA provides a private right of action to members of a protected class where an at-large election system creates racially polarized voting. Racially polarized voting means voting where there is a difference between candidates or other electoral choices preferred by voters in a protected class and those preferred by voters in the rest of the electorate. Now, under the CVRA, the definition of at-large election is broad, and it includes election systems where the voters of the entire jurisdiction elect the members to the governing body. This is the election system that the city currently uses. Members of the entire jurisdiction elect all members of the governing body, and that is considered an at-large election system. So the only method of election guaranteed to not violate the CVRA is by-district elections. As a result, many public agencies, either on their own initiative or in response to threat of CVRA litigation, have actually transitioned to by-district elections. District-based voting systems are ones in which a city is divided into separate geographic districts, with each electing its own representative to the city council. In these sorts of by-district election systems, the districts are balanced by voter population to ensure a one-person, one-vote rule. Thus, voting districts must be relatively equal in size so that each citizen's voting power is roughly equivalent to every other citizen voting on the matter. In order to initiate the process of transitioning to district-based voting, a council must first adopt a resolution setting forth its intention to change the election system. Of course, that is the action being considered this evening. So following passage of the resolution of intent, the city would then hold a number of public hearings and would retain the services of a demographer to help prepare the districts that would be used. Usually this would be done within a narrow window of time after the resolution of intent. This, however, is problematic because of the recent completion of the 2020 census. So under the elections code, cities that have established district-based elections must reevaluate and make adjustments to the boundaries of their election districts following each census so that the districts are substantially equal in population. This means that any districts formed immediately would be based on 2010 census data and would need to be adjusted after receiving the 2020 census data. Because the next election is not until November 2022, this would result in the formation of districts that would never actually be used by the city. So given the issues noted above, staff recommends that council adopt a resolution of intention committing the district to convert to district-based elections after the release of the 2020 census data. It is our understanding that the 2020 census data is likely to be released sometime in April or May of 2021. The benefits of this approach would include avoiding adopting a map and using the old the 2010 census data that will never actually be implemented, as well as also avoiding the extensive and expensive hearing and map development process twice. Again, if you relied on the 2010 census data, you would need to do it once and then actually go through the entire process all over again with that new 2020 census data. The city has communicated with LULAC representatives, and they have informed the city that they are agreeable with this approach and are willing to allow the city to wait until the 2020 census data is released before the city moves forward with the requisite public hearings, the preparing of the districts, and everything else. Accordingly, a draft resolution of intent is before council for consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Travis. I've got a question. We have 5 council members. Does that mean we would have to have 5 districts, or only 4 districts, and the mayor is voted in at large, or is the mayor going to be appointed? I mean, how does that normally work?
It really depends on the jurisdiction. So there are some cities that have transitioned to by-district elections where they, on a 5-member council, they have 4 districts and then a mayor that's still elected at large. There are many agencies that have gone to all 5 districts. And so there are individual seats, and then the mayoral position rotates on either an annual basis or is just appointed annually by the city council, much like we do appointment of the mayor pro tem right now. So those are all things that the city would decide and consider as we went forward with the process, but there are different ways that it can be done. And all of those options would be presented, and council would be making those decisions as we moved along. It's a little premature at this point to actually decide how that would work.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any other comments or questions for Travis before we go out to the public?
I did. So I just wanted to make it clear. Right now, the resolution would just be to approve the resolution that we are going to eventually be looking into districts. And then once we get the census information, we'll be looking into how we're going to divide up districts within the city, right?
Yeah, so the resolution is committing the city to moving forward with district-based elections. But in doing so, it would wait until the release of the 2020 census data. So under the CVRA, the strict rules require that the city actually move forward immediately and hold all of its public hearings and prepare the district maps within a very narrow wind frame. It's 90 days for, I think, holding the public meetings, then 135 days for actually adopting your ordinance. It would be really difficult to do that in the current environment. One, because of the pandemic, it would be extremely difficult to actually hold the necessary public meetings that are required to discuss all of these issues. And then also because of the release of the 2020 data, to make sure we fit within that requisite time frame, we'd have to do everything based on the 2010 data, which would be outdated, and we'd never actually use it, and it would be a significant waste, for lack of a better term, of city resources. And so this resolution is basically saying we are committed to moving forward with by-district elections, but we're going to wait until we have the 2020 census data, and then we're going to get that ball rolling and do everything that we need to do to get it done before the general election in 2022.
Okay. Thank you.
And one of the comments, or I guess questions that I have, Travis, I was looking at the actual information that we were able to get from Rosemary and County. So back in the census in 2010, Greenfield only had a 42.9% count. And this round that we had in 2020, we only got that 64.6% count. So we didn't even make it to the 80s. We didn't even get that full 100% count. So is that it is going to affect sooner or later once the whole district elections come into play, the mapping, I should say, because it's a huge gap. I mean, just for us as colleagues, I'm letting you guys know Greenfield only had a 64.6% count of our Greenfield population. We're missing that other chunk of population that we didn't get count. So I think that's going to be one of our struggles.
It will have some effect. So in an ideal world, of course, you want 100% reporting for the census. I mean, that would be fantastic, and it would make the demographer's job probably easier to know that they have 100% results that they're looking at when they're preparing the districts. There are other ways to address some of those shortfalls. They look at a lot of historical data. They look at comparative jurisdictions and other things. But you're absolutely right. These sorts of issues stress the importance of accurate counting during the census periods, and really show why it's important to get community involvement, because it has implications like this, like your one vote, one person rule. So if you really want to have a voice, get out there and get counted in the census. So when you're preparing the districts, for the person that's going to represent you, all of that is incorporated into the information.
Another question I have,
Well-
Travis, we just did an election. Would the positions be on a rotating basis like they are now, or would we have to do all 5 at the same time?
They would be staggered, and that is another issue that we would have to figure out for the 2022 election is what the seats are going to be open. Again, there's a number of different ways that is done, and it would be part of the process moving forward, but it would not be a general election for all 5 seats. It would be a staggered vote again.
Okay, thank you.
Going back to Yaneli's comment for a moment about having to find out how everything's going to get laid out, I think one of the other bigger problems that we're going to have is not only do we have an incomplete census count, but if you look at the election that we just had, we only have about 5,000 registered voters in the city. So laying out the district in a way to not only represent the 20,000 residents of the city, but also divide those 5,000 voters up is going to be a little bit difficult as well. And I think that's another reason for waiting until we get the 2020 census data and figuring out how to lay those out.
You're absolutely right, Councilmember Tipton. And I'll also defer a little bit, although we don't have one yet. Certainly that is the reason to hire a demographer, because they are the ones who are professionals in doing that. But you're absolutely right. It is difficult to create those districts sometimes when you have a larger population and a very low voter turnout or low numbers of registered voters, because you might have clumps of lots of registered voters in certain areas. And then it's, well, how do you draw an accurate district? And that's where you get into the weird shapes and everything else. But again, that's further down the line where the demographer will come into play. But it stresses the importance of really getting out there and getting counted during these census years.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Travis before we go out to the public? See none. Okay, we will open it up for public comments. Ann, do we have any emails you can read into the record first?
We do. Ed was going to be reading the first one. It's in Spanish and then he'll translate in English.
Okay.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Sonia Orellana. Aunque yo no sea votante, mi hija y algunos de mis familiares sí son votantes. Yo voy de acuerdo con la resolución hacia distrito y doy mi apoyo que sea aprobada. Muchas gracias por su atención. And the translation is, good afternoon, my name is Sonia Orellana. I do not vote, but my daughter and some of my relatives do vote. I agree with the resolution for a district, and I support the approval of it. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and hello, City Council. My name is Andrew Sandoval, Vice President of the League of United Latin American Citizens Council 2055. I would like to thank the council for taking steps to move forward towards district elections. I look forward to a continued partnership and collaboration with the City of Greenfield. I would also like to express the importance of treating all with respect and dignity. Thank you for your service and work. Andrew Sandoval.
Thank you.
Next one. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for bringing this resolution to the agenda and hope that we will be ready for our next city election in 2 years. I think it is time for our city to dive into separate geographic districts so voters can only vote for candidates running for office in that district. Mayor, council members, I support this resolution and hope you do too. Thank you, Beatriz Diaz.
Thank you.
Dear City Council, I want to share 3 points with you about tonight's decision regarding district election. First, it's important to remember that during today's COVID environment and conditions, it's not easy to participate in tonight's online meeting. Using technology is difficult for some residents, especially for our senior citizens. The decision to move to district elections is a huge decision that can have both positive and negative effects on our community. We should and can wait until all residents have the opportunity to voice their opinion. Second, I am not aware of any informational workshops in person or online provided for Greenfield residents to learn more about moving to district elections. Maybe those workshops were provided and I missed them. But if they were not provided, it's unfair for this community that a decision be made tonight. Thirdly, I reached out to 3 individuals to get more information about district elections. I reached out to 2 LULAC officials and 1 Greenfield City Council member. Both LULAC officials who live in Salinas called me promptly. I sent 3 emails to our Greenfield City Council member beginning on November 13, requesting a phone call to talk about district elections, but up until today, I still have not received a call. In conclusion, I ask that the council and LULAC to delay tonight's decision until we can provide information to the residents of Greenfield and until we can return to in-person meetings. By then, we will have the 2020 census results, which will be a big advantage. It's the just and right thing to do. Thank you, Raul Rodriguez. And those are the only 3 or only 4 we had. We also have a raised hand by BJG.
Hello, it's Bobby Joe Garcia again. And I just wanted to voice my support for this item, that I hope y'all follow through with it. I think it's been a long time coming for Greenfield to need to move to district-based elections in order to have better representation on our city council, because there's a lot of parts of this town that are neglected and forgotten. And I think starting that transition to district-based elections would help move us as a city and community in a better direction. And also, in turn, I think contribute to community civic engagement, because when people actually feel like they have a say and that their voice matters and that they are going to have actual representation, it tends to make people more likely to get involved and to engage with y'all. So I think all around, it's a good thing to move towards. So thank you.
Thank you. Any others, Ann?
Nope, that was the last one. Thank you.
Okay, we will close out public comments and come back to council comments, review action.
I have a question and a comment, and the question is towards you, Travis, regarding Mr. Rodriguez's comment. Do we have any time to say, okay, let's take this off the agenda and bring it back in the following meeting? Or I just kind of want him to hear from your point of view, do we have the time to actually do that? I know he brought up a good point, educating the public, or at least making them aware of what's happening, but do we even have the time?
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. That's a complicated question. Under the CVRA, there is a 45-day requirement for you to decide whether or not you are going to move forward with the district-based elections and approve a resolution of intent to do so. We are pressed up against that time, or that due date, with respect to when the city received the initial CVRA request letter. And there is a importance in getting the resolution of intent passed within that time frame, because if you do so, you are actually immune from further CVRA litigation if you have that resolution of intent approved. And that is why there is a strong recommendation to move forward with the resolution this evening. The city could wait to adopt the resolution, but then you would lose out on that statutory immunity, or potentially lose out on that statutory immunity. And the governor has also issued some executive orders that adjust the timelines, or I should say affect the timelines. And so there is some argument that there's wiggle room within the 45-day period. However, there have been a number of challenges submitted in court challenging the governor's executive orders, some of which have come back with adverse outcomes for the governor. And so the authority for him issuing those executive orders is somewhat in question, which creates questions with respect to the impact on the changes to the CVRA deadlines he made. So given all of those sort of gray areas and those different considerations, and the importance of making sure that you have that statutory immunity moving forward, it is recommended that you move forward with the resolution this evening, and that it not be delayed until the meeting in January.
Okay, and I think my only comment that I want to follow up with is that just to let the community know that it has been a conversation that has happened in the past. I mean, it's been on everybody's mind, or I guess radar. And this was actually one of the first conversations I had back with Supervisor Salinas, back when I began in 2016, and that the big conversation was district elections. They're costly, but the way how cities are growing, especially South County cities, that was the direction that many cities are headed. And so I just want to let the community know that this has been part of the conversation at the supervisor seats, and now it's coming to us. And I know King City is one of the first sister cities that has district elections. And I'm hoping, and I know LULAC is watching us, that, you know, all South County cities might go in through that same process, not just Greenfield, but, you know, Soledad, Gonzalez. So I think that is going to show unity as well with the sister cities, since we are sharing already, you know, that support between PD departments, that collaboration between city managers, that collaboration between council members. And this is just the next step. And I really do believe that district elections take the government home. Like, you're literally in your own district, and it gives you, the community, a better way to hold your elected officials accountable. And I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you. I just want to add real quick, it's, you know, it's not working in King City. I'm not for district elections, but that's a fight we can't win. I hope LULAC soon does the same in Soledad and Gonzalez, because it feels like we're being picked on a little bit. But again, it's a fight we can't win, and we got to do what we got to do. That's all I got to say.
Travis, I was wondering if you could go over some of the costs involved in not going along with the district elections.
Sure, Councilmember White. So that was included in the staff report. I believe that was included with the agenda. I did not mention it in the staff report that I gave. But CVR litigation is expensive. And when I talked earlier about racially polarized voting, the threshold is actually very, very low. And to date, there has not been a single public agency who has decided to defend a CVRA action that has been successful. There is one, and it's a questionable result, and it's actually on appeal right now. And there is a strong consensus that decision is going to be overturned. And that person who was successful in defending is actually going to lose. So if that is the case, then public agencies who decide to defend are going to have basically a 100% losing record in the matter. And the cost of defense is expensive. Not only are you required to pay for your own legal costs, so that would be whoever represents you in the matter, you are also required to pay for the attorney's fees and cost of the individual or the party that sues you. Several of those attorney fees awards have been over $1 million, some in the $7 to $10 million range. Many that are up in the several hundreds of thousands of dollars, right around the $1 million mark. assuming that, that would be the expected cost of litigation if the city decided to not move forward with district-based elections and did decide to defend against a CVRA lawsuit, assuming one would be filed, you're probably looking at a plaintiff's award of at least $500,000. And I think that's the very, very low end estimate, plus relatively equal cost to pay the attorneys and the demographer that you would still need to hire to represent you in that action. But it's a very, CVRA defense is a very expensive endeavor for a city to undertake.
And also, could you explain, if you lose, you end up, what happens at that point?
Well, so if you lose, then the courts require you, if you lose, you just continue to expose yourself to CVRA litigation. That is one of the significant risks, is you're never immune to it. So if you lose one case, another plaintiff could bring a suit as well and sue you under the same grounds. Just winning one case does not mean you will win the second one. And if you lose CVRA litigation, it's also essentially a court order to move forward with district-based, because it's saying your at-large election system is illegal. And if there is a court order out there that says your election system is illegal, then all of the other plaintiffs are going to come out of the woodworks and also sue you if you continue to move forward. And they're going to use essentially the same case against you. So that would be a worst case scenario.
So essentially, the only way to get off, as you mentioned earlier, is to go to district-based elections.
The only way that we are aware of, legally speaking, to, I guess, immunize yourself from a CVRA litigation is to move to district-based elections. That is the one thing mentioned in the statutes that is acceptable and you cannot be sued for.
Travis, I had a question. I know Mr. Sandoval is on the line, and I know LULAC is always very cooperative. Hearing from Raul, I know he has been very persistent in wanting more information. Can we ask Mr. Sandoval, would we be able to get a chance to at least kind of offer a workshop to our community? I know he's still connected as our participants. Would that be okay, Travis, if we hear from Mr. Sandoval?
If council would like to hear from Mr. Sandoval, that's certainly fine. And I mentioned about the community involvement. So as I said during my staff report, there are several public hearings that have to be held as part of the process to move towards district-based elections. And also, if we wanted to expand upon that and the city wanted to have a more informational session or something like that, it certainly could. There is a lot of information available. It's just a matter of getting it to the people who want it or getting it into the right hands. But again, going back to your question, Councilwoman, certainly if Mr. Sandoval would like to speak and you would like to hear from him, that would be appropriate at this time.
That would be good. So hopefully, Andrew, Mr. Sandoval, if you're hearing us, would you like to say anything?
He is raising his hand, so we're going to let him in.
Okay.
Good evening, Council and Mayor and community. I did have a chance to speak with Mr. Rodriguez, and we would be more than glad to provide the city with any opportunity to have those community engagement information sessions, and would gladly waive any timelines, as long as Mr. Clarkman can just verify that. But yes, community engagement is important. Community education is important, and we welcome that. And as the council, it's ultimately your decision how to proceed, and whatever is the best for the community is always on the top of our mind. So, yes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sandoval. Thanks for working with us and giving us some time to get our community involved in this. So we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, I wanted to jump in here because I was on board with Yaneli right when she started speaking. That's the exact same concern that I had. I'm sure Raul, Mr. Rodriguez is not the only one in the community to think like, wow, where is this coming from? We haven't had a discussion about it. The community wasn't engaged, and it's just being thrown in here as a resolution. And being in the council, we understand where we're at. We know where we're at. We have these conversations with city manager, with the attorneys. So I do want to hold off on making this resolution until we get at least one workshop with the community and give them some information that they may, need to understand this a little bit more, a little better, answer their questions that they may have. So I'd really like to table this for a future council meeting.
Okay, thank you for that.
So I've just got a quick question, Travis. And have there been any cases at all that we know of where a city has decided to go with district-based elections and they engage with a demographer, they engage everybody that they need to do, and find out that there is no easy, simple way to go to a district election and they end up remaining at large?
I'm not aware of that specific situation, council member. It could have happened because it wouldn't necessarily be, reported in litigation or otherwise. So it's possible that that has occurred, but I'm not aware of a situation like that. Typically, when somebody decides to move toward district-based elections, they do it, or at the outset, they decide not to do it. And then there is resulting CVR litigation. The other thing I will mention, and again, this is council's discretion, so you tell me what you would like to do, and if you table it, that's certainly within your discretion. The other potential liability is under the CVRA, if somebody submits a demand letter, they are automatically entitled to attorney's fees up to $30,000 just for submitting the demand letter and then you moving forward the district-based elections. Right now, the only request we have is from LULAC, who has been very, very helpful and willing to work with the city. Should the city decide to table this, I can tell you that there are attorney mills that are going around that are suing agencies, requiring them to go to district-based elections just to request their $30,000. In the event that there is another demand letter that is submitted between now and the time you adopt the resolution of intent, it's very possible that you would be required to pay that person $30,000 in the event you do decide to move towards district-based elections. And I can't say that many of those other firms or individuals are as cooperative or willing and flexible to work with the city as LULAC has been. So there is that risk as well.
Well, can we table this tonight and then if we have to have an emergency meeting, if what you just said happens, we could have an emergency meeting? Is that something that is possible?
Mayor, it wouldn't matter. If you receive the letter, you receive the letter. So certainly if we heard that you were going to receive a demand letter, then we could hold a special meeting. But that's not how it would happen. The city manager would just open his mailbox one day and receive a CVRA demand letter, and we wouldn't be able to do anything about it other than have this conversation all over again, and then potentially have to pay that person up to $30,000 for their attorney's fees.
Well, so what you're saying is we need to take care of this tonight is your recommendation.
My recommendation is that council take action tonight, but I certainly understand the sensitivity of the issue and wanting to get the public information. And so if you wanted to, you could table it, but certainly it's staff's recommendation at this point to move forward and take action this evening, again, to cut off that liability and to take advantage of that statutory immunity moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I know if we move forward, and I hear your recommendation, Travis, Paul, how early can we start planning a workshop? I mean, it's going to be all via Zoom with everything that's happening, but just to kind of get the conversation started with the community, at least to feel that, yes, we're listening to you, community members, and I know it's difficult for everybody, but I think Travis explained it really well, the circumstances where we're at now, and it's something that can't wait, but at least bring them on board. How soon can we plan for that educational forum or just workshop, just like a friendly workshop, no agenda, no nothing, just talk about district elections?
I can call Andrew tomorrow and we can start working on it. I think, and I don't think it would be that difficult. I mean, certainly it's up to him, but I don't think it would be that difficult to get out the general guidelines of what we're talking about and why Travis is somewhat insistent about this. It's because at this point, it needs to be done. And yes, we all need to understand what's going on, but it's not that difficult a task to get across. So we can do that immediately.
Okay, so what if, I'm trying to, really take into consideration what Travis, what you're talking about. Because we as council, we know. But it really bothers me that I feel like we're kind of leaving the community in the dark by not having this conversation beforehand, by not having this conversation before we're actually doing this resolution. And so it bothers me. Is there, how about we pass it tonight and then we still have a community workshop so they know what we're doing, why we're doing it. Because honestly, it's our hands are tied. Like at this point, our hands are tied. We know what needs to happen so that our city is not getting sued. Our city is not going to fork out, thousands of dollars. This is going to happen, whether we like it or not. And to me, honestly, I think districts like Yaneli, Councilwoman Martinez said, it holds us accountable in our own districts. So to me, it's a good thing. It's a good starting point to continue to hold each other and our community hold us accountable. So maybe we pass this tonight as the resolution that we are to initiate the transition into district-based elections. And then we look, by the end of next week, hopefully, to have an actual workshop and have the information going out to the community, because it's, I'd rather wait, but I understand Travis what he's saying. He's like, we could get a letter tomorrow and it's done. We're forking out thousands of dollars. So I don't know, that's my feeling. And I hear you, Mr. Rodriguez, like I hear you, and I don't like it. I don't like that we're kind of pushing this without getting that community workshop in. But I do hope the community understands where we're at right now as a council.
Mayor Pro Tem, you're absolutely right. So I did not mean to suggest earlier, and if I did, I apologize. The city doesn't need to wait until after we get the 2020 census data to start doing anything. It's not like we're just going to adopt tonight and then not pick it back up until then. Certainly, we could start getting the public involved tomorrow or the next day. As City Manager Wood said, he can reach out to Mr. Sandoval, after the meeting or tomorrow, and we can actually set up a community forum, start providing people with information regarding what district-based elections is, what does it mean. I'm also more than happy to work with City Manager Wood and IT staff, and we can get something kind of like a one sheet or something put together to post on the Facebook or the city's website with some references or just some general information about what district-based elections means, sort of the process moving forward, some ideas of what to expect. More than happy to do that. And that's something that we could turn around in fairly short order if that would work for you.
I think we've got to go forward. I mean, the voters voted us. We've heard this for a while now. We've heard about it. The council knows what's going on. They elected us to make these hard decisions, and then we've got to protect the city from litigation. So I think our hands are pretty much tied. We've got to move forward with the item tonight.
So I would like to make the motion. Sorry, Drew, go ahead. Speak your mind, Drew. Speak your mind.
No worries. What I was going to add is we actually are listening to the people, because how long have we heard that our attorney's fees and our litigation problems are too high? So at this point, we need to deflect some of that. We need to defend ourselves against an additional possible lawsuit. And I think going ahead with this is definitely one way to do that. It's being financially and fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and second Yaneli's motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
And this would be for resolution 2020-90. Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Tipton,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Antolon,
Yes.
Mayor Walker.
Yes. So motion carries. Thank you guys for that.